Welcome to part 5. I ended up figuring out that error. Took me a few minutes to figure it out, but yeah, now it's fine. It's displaying. So let me run it again. So let's run. So there we go. So now we know we're able to read. So let's test it out again. Remember we already written the code for reading, right? So for only reading the firework display, nothing more. So I'm gonna click open, and then I think there's an issue with the path. So let's see. Error, the provided file is not valid. Path, and then, yeah, you see. So the error here is that extra Kelly, that extra forward slash. So to fix that, it's simple. So I'm gonna go back to my source, to my code display pane. This is where we wanna go to. So at the top there, we remove that extra bracket, that extra forward slash. I don't know why I keep saying bracket. And the reason why we're doing that is because if you check, right, let me show you what I'm talking about. So reference libraries, right, the jar file, I'm gonna go under file, the orchestrator file handler. If you check, right, it adds a space there. It adds a forward slash, so I don't need to provide the forward slash. That's why it was having an extra forward slash. That's why it was complaining. So let's run it again. There we go. So now I should be able to read, provided we did everything correctly. Still invalid. Data.layouts is not a valid, is not valid. How can it not be valid? Because the file is there. Data.layouts /fd, let me see. Data layouts. Oh, my bad. It's not layouts, it's displays. Yeah, nah, mixing up things. So it's displays. Because remember, this the second parameter is the directory of where the text file is. I was sending the directory for it, so it was actually right. I was sending the directory for the binary file, of which is in the layouts. That's the binary files. And then open, and then it's not displaying at the moment, but it should be displaying. But at least we're not getting any error, right? So let's fix the main issue with our code. Let's see what's the main issue with our code. Right, so there's the code. We are indeed reading and doing everything. So why isn't it doing the right things? So let's try and do this. Let's add it back to that menu item. Let's see what it will, if that will make a difference. So immediately after reading the bundle, let's place it there. And so immediately after getting the display bundle back, let's test it out. Then open, and then let's see. There we go. Finally. So as you can see, if you plan well, everything's going to display. There's the file. So the issue that I have here is the spacing between. So the space between the fields, right? We call that H gap and V gap, vertical gap and horizontal gap. If you know if you know English very well, you know which one is vertical and which one is horizontal. So I'm gonna click this, and I'm gonna put it outside, right? Like this. And then there we go. And then we should actually handle the case in which an error is occurred, right? We should say, okay, but there is error handling for this thing. So the other classes implement the error handling. So far so good. It's been a long journey, but yeah, we're getting there. So I need to set the H gap and the V gap between the fields. So I need to set that for my grid, right? So for my grid display, let's zoom in a bit. So grid display dot set H gap. So H gap can be any value and it should be a double. So let's say the horizontal gaps should be by a difference of 6, right? And then grid display.set B gap should be a difference of 6 too. Let's be consistent. And then let's run it. You can do other fancy things like change the color of the text that's being displayed. You see, there's the gaps, right? There's the gaps. I feel like it's neat. It's decent. It's perfect. I really have no complaints at the moment. It's perfect. So this is what we have. It's reading perfectly fine. So now we need to display the other information. So that's where the real issue comes now. So if you remember the pattern that we're seeing here, right? I'm gonna use the same logic. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. So the only thing that's increasing is the columns, right? So we'll do that. So let me do that, right? So let's scroll down here. We are done reading that. So let me see if it's not now and it exists, but it's fine. We can sort of like add everything inside one button, but it doesn't really matter. But inside one if statement, but I don't like that. So let me just do this. So if handle is not equals to now, and the file exists, right? So handle dot exists, then we can do this. I know it's a repetition, just that I don't want to add everything inside one if statement. That's the problem that I'm trying to avoid. So let's start with our thing, right? So if you remember the planning that we had, okay, I haven't closed this app, so let me close. Remember the planning that we have, right? It's to start at row 1, column 1. And then the only thing that keeps on increasing is the columns. So we need to do that. But before we do that, we need to get firework entities, right? So let's go back to firework. I think I won't implement the we'll see the canvas part, and I think it's gonna be the videos are gonna be way too long, and I'm exhausted because these videos that I've been making them back to back. So after finishing that recording, I do the next recording. I only take like 2 minutes, a 2-minute break. So the whole day I've been coding. So let's check main, scroll down, firework entity. Is it the display file handler? No, not the display file handler. I think the display bundle. That's the one that I want to know what it has. So it also has a firework entity. We can get the entities. And then the firework entity itself, let's go to firework entity. The firework entity has a firework of which can get the firework, right? I know it's a bit long the way it's structured, but I just wanted to show you the logic behind it. So we have multiple entities, right? And each entity stores a specific firework, right? So what I can do is I can say it returns an array list of list of firework entities. Then I'm gonna call it entities is equal to from that instance, the bundle instance that we created there. So bundle dot get entities. Then we import the array list. After importing the array list, we import the firework entity, and then we're good to go, right? So I need to do this within the if statement because that's when it's true. I don't want to repeat this, but just that for the sake of making my code simpler, I don't add every code under one line. So here we are displaying the fireworks, right? So the fireworks, I need to go through each firework entity, right? So I need to do a for each loop. Firework entity from entities, and then each entity returns the firework. So firework is equals to entity dot get firework. If you understand the logic, it wouldn't be a problem to come up with this. So let's display. Okay, this is for the fireworks, but I think I'm skipping. I should display the pyrotechnician. So let me just display. Let me also add an if statement here. Remember, you shouldn't repeat this. I'm just repeating this so that my code is simpler to understand. I don't want to group everything under one if statement. That's why I'm writing it this way. So I need to read a pyrotechnician. And remember, the pyrotechnician is stored inside that firework display. So I need to use that firework display instance. So pyrotechnician tech, right, is equal to firework display dot get lead technician. Right, like I said, if you understand the design and logic and everything, you shouldn't be having any issues. So the grid that we're displaying on is called grid pyro, right? And it's somewhat going to repeat this, right? So, okay, let me not copy, let me write it. I'm just showing you there at the top. So grid pyro dot set h gap to be 6. That's going to be the horizontal gap, and then set the vertical gap to be also 6.0D. And then we are done with the gaps. And then now we should start creating the labels and everything. I think for pyrotechnician, it's only 2 things: the full name and the number, which is very good. It's short. So create the labels for them. LBL name for the name, new label. Remember, before you use any node, you need to instantiate it because it's a class, or else it's going to point to a null pointer. To a null, it's going to it's going to generate a null pointer exception. So LBM name that set text. What's going to be the text inside this label? And if you check here, they called it pyrotechnician full name. You don't have to match exactly like this. You don't have to, but I'm just going to be like that. So pyrotechnician full name. And then what's the other thing that we need? The text field. So text field. And remember, the text field, they can't be changed. The information in the text field, remember, text field is for getting text. We should also add options to make it unchangeable, right? It shouldn't be changed. Okay, it's recording. So txt, what's the phone number, right? So but I still need for the name. Txt name is got the new text field, and then txt name dot set text, and the text that we're going to set is the text that we get from the technician, right? Which is the text name that get full name, and then create another label, LBM phone, right? So the phone number, it's equals to new label, and then we're going to say LBL phone dot set text, set the text, which is just pyrotechnician phone number. You don't have to write a very long label like this. You don't have to. I'm just trying to mimic the design to show you that it's really possible. It didn't just show you a design that's impossible. It is possible to do it. So txt phone is equal to new text field, and then set the text. Txt phone dot set text, and then the text that we're setting is the text that we get from the pyrotechnician. And then we are done. This should be straightforward to add. So grid pyro dot add txt label for LBL name. We're gonna start at 1 1, right? Column 1, row 1, and then the text for this txt name is gonna be in the same row, but column is gonna increase. So the row is gonna be 2. No, row is gonna be 1, but column is gonna increase, column 2. And then we sort of do the same thing for the phone. So .add, I want to start with the label, LBL phone, LBL phone. We are in a different row now, so row 2, but then column is column 1. Then grid pyro.add txt phone, which is the text for the phone. Still the same row. Okay, not the same row. Row should be increasing. Okay, let me think about it. It's going to be a text editor. We need to think about it. We need to plan. So I'm going to have 0, row 0, 1, 2, right? And then 0, 1, 2. And there's going to be a lot of spaces in between. So I'm going to have the label here. Okay, I'm going to start at 1, right? So I decided to skip all of that and start at 1. So I also need to start at 1. Okay, so that's going to be there. So I see now it's going to be here. 1, 1, right? That's where it starts. And then the text field is the same row, but then column has changed. That other one is a new column, new row, but same row, but column has changed. So I'm fine. My logic is fine. So this should be 2. And then once we run this, my throat is now painful from talking. So if you run this and then we do this, we should see the firework display. And then for the pyrotechnician, there's the pyrotechnician information. Like I said, you don't have to write it in too long. It doesn't have to be that long. So now we're left with fireworks, and then we should be done with the solution. And then I think that should suffice. I won't do the other parts, but the other parts are pretty straightforward. Or I'll see, maybe I'll do them tomorrow because I'm very tired right now from talking. So we have this entities, right? So we're handling the fireworks, right? So let's do the fireworks. So for the fireworks, I'm gonna need labels for this. It's gonna be a very long thing. So fireworks, so let me open the firework class so that I know what information I should be displaying. So there's the firework. We have the firework ID, firework name, fuse length, and color. So we need a label and a text field for each. So that's 4 by 2. That means it's 8 nodes that we need, 4 labels and 4 text fields. So let's do that. For each firework entity, remember, for each firework entity, it needs to be within the for loop. For each firework entity. So label LBL firework ID, right? It's equal to new label. Then we set the label text, right? Label firework ID dot set text. This is going to be firework ID. And then for the grid, before we start, for the grid, we need to set the vertical and horizontal gaps, right? Let's set H gap to be 6.0D. And for those who are wondering, how do I remember all of this? Practice makes perfect. And also explaining this information to somebody else will result in you becoming a better programmer. So we have this label, and then we need the text field that goes hand in hand with it. Txt firework ID is equals to new text field, and then txt firework ID dot set text. The text that we're gonna set is the text that we get from the firework, right? So firework instance, which is this firework instance, and then we want to get the firework ID dot get firework ID. That's the first piece of information we're getting. So here, getting the firework ID, right? And then here, we are getting the firework name. I think there should be a name and the length and the color. Firework name. So I'm gonna create a new label, LBL firework name. Remember, though your variables don't need to be this long. I'm just making it easier for you guys to understand. LBL firework name dot set text, and then the text should be firework name, and then the text field for displaying the information txt firework name is equals to new text field, and then txt firework name dot set nope, oops, dot set text, and then the text that I'm setting is from that instance information from the firework. So I'm going to use the instance dot get firework name, and I'm done, and then getting the firework fuse, I think it's fuse length if I'm not mistaken, or the length LBL. Let's see, is it fuse length? Yeah, fuse length and then color. So LBL fuse length is equals to new label, just the label for the fuse length. So LBL fuse length dot set text. Then this is just the label, right? So I'm going to put a string in there. So this is going to be the firework fuse length. Okay, I don't need that space there. That's going to be done by the V gap and the H gap, that space. So txt fuse length is equals to new text field, and then okay, I don't need string there, and then txt fuse length dot set text, and then firework dot get fuse length, but then fuse length is a double, so we need to convert that to a string because we are using text fields and they're meant for only text. So string dot value of function, we pass in the fuse length. Java is so intelligent, it will pick up the data type and use the correct value of function. So you don't have to worry about that. And then here we are getting the firework color. I shouldn't say getting, I should say displaying. It's fine. I should say displaying because with displaying and getting, it's one and the same thing, but I prefer to say displaying. So displaying, there we go. And then what I would do is I will create the same labels in text fields. So label, I just lost my train of thought for a second there. So it's equals to new label, and then LBL color dot set text, and then the text. Okay, this is just no more text. So firework color, and then txt. Okay, I need to create a text field. Text field txt color is equal to new text field, and then txt color dot set text. Then I'm going to get this information from the firework instance. Dot get color, but it needs a string, so I need to call the value of, because color is an enum, right? It's of type enum. And remember that enum is just an integer, so therefore it's not a string. So I need to call the value of function, pass that value that I want to cast to a string. And then now the question is, how do we display this information? So let's plan. So what I'm going to do is, by default, I'm going to output which firework it is first. So this would be, for example, let's see, I need to check the instance of, remember the fireworks, right? I think there's different fireworks. So I need to check which instance it is. There's rocket and there's fountain firework, right? There's two different fireworks. So based on the firework, so that it's easier for the user to see, I'm going to output something like this. And then I say, let's say, for example, this is a rocket firework. Then in the following columns, I start displaying, right? So if you check this, is it row 1. This is at row 1, column 1, right? That's where we're going to display. So I'm going to start there. So I'm going to create two variables that I'm going to need to use, right? So int row and column, they all start at 1, equals to 1, right? I'm going to use those rows and column to help me display, right? So before we display, remember I need to find what instance it is. So I'm going to use an instance of, you don't have to do this, it's just for readability. You could display and just be done with it. So this firework instance, it's an instance of what class? So I'm going to use the instance of keyword. So is it an instance of rocket firework? I'm checking. If it is, then I'll put firework label at the top. Else if firework is an instance of this class named fountain firework, then it should output fountain on the top. So what I'm going to do is every time it does this, I'm going to create a new label. Okay, I don't want to keep wasting memory, so let me not instantiate every time. So LBL title is equals to new label, right? Just for the title. Then LBL title dot set text to be equal to this is a rocket, right? So this is going to be a rocket. Do this rocket fire work like this, right? And then I'm going to repeat the same thing if I find that it's the other one, right? So like this. So this would be a fountain firework. So this would be fountain. And you can add colors and change depending on the rocket. It doesn't really matter. So because I don't want to have too much code. So rocket fire at the top there. So now we need to specify which row and column displays this, right? Which is by default row 1, column 1, of which that's the two values that we've initialized it to. So this would be, let me think. This would be, we need to add it to the grid. So grid fireworks dot add what node LBL title for that specific column and row. Perfect. That's the power of auto completion or IntelliSense. And then for the information, right, I don't want it to start immediately after that row. I want it to skip and start on the third row, right? So that means it should add 2. It's going to skip by the value 2. So that means for the, remember, the only thing that I'm changing is the row. The columns are fine, right? The columns are fine. So the only thing that I need to change here is the row. I need to add the row, increment the row by 1, by 2, I mean. So row is equals to row plus 2, so that it starts on the next row. But then the column is still the same, right? So I need to display this into, okay, I need to display it after here. I need to display, so I need to say grid fireworks dot add the label, which is called LBL firework, then grid fireworks dot add txt firework ID. So there's something that we need to be very careful of. We need to be careful of where we are adding, right? So it's gonna it's gonna skip the row by 2, right? So it's gonna keep adding 2 for each, remember it's for each what? Firework, or for each firework. That's when it's gonna increment this by 2. So it's gonna have, there's gonna be a lot of space in between. It makes it easier for you to read. So the question is, now we need to be careful of how we're displaying. So this is where the label would go, right? And then the text field would go in the column incremented by 1. I need to increment the column by 1 because by default column is 1, right? So I need to increment it by 1. And then increment the column by 1. You can use pre-increment or post-increment, but I suggest use pre-increment. That would be safe. And then in the next information, that's when we increase the row. We have label. This is how you plan. This is literally how I plan my code so that you guys can see. So you see, it's in the next row, and it's in the next row, the label. So I need to increment by 1. So let's do that. Create fireworks dot add the LBL firework name, that specific row and column, right? But then remember, we are planning. I need to check if I'm really adding in the right column and row. Okay, I should have said LBL firework name, LBL firework name. And then here it's txt firework name. Let's see. So look at the column. The column is still the same. After we've incremented it by 1, still the same column. But then the row keeps changing by 1. Because if I add again, that means the row increases. If you're paying attention, you understand what I'm talking about. You see, it's still column 2, but the row is the one that changes. So from now on, I know the row, before I add the thing, I need to change it. So before I add that piece of information, I need to change it. So I'm just gonna, you could just pre-increment here, it's fine. You can just do that. So I know I'm gonna do this for every single item. This is the pattern. The only thing that increments is the row. So also finding patterns is very useful. So here we just need to change this to this, and then this, this. And then we also copy for the last time. Then we should be done with the practical. With what we have so far, I don't wanna. Okay, it's fine. I'll just do the visitor and visitor design pattern question. So there we go. There's the code. It should be working perfectly fine. And then before we start at the top there, it's going to increase by 2. So that's perfect. So let's try and read, right? Let's see if it was really indeed perfect or we failed to plan. So let's see. We've read, and then let's look. Yeah, we failed to plan. We didn't do things the right way. We're gonna have to go and check it again. So you see, planning is very important. So I just made errors here, so we need to fix that. So you see, it's not displaying the way we wanted it to display, right? Something didn't go right. We'll fix that just now. So you see here, I don't like how this is. So I'm just gonna remove the pyrotechnician part. I just call it full name, because now it's being cut by this thing. So there's the pyrotechnician. I wanna remove that. And then there we go. So let's see what could be the issue here. So let's look at it step by step, right? So we have firework, there it is, and then we have the grid fireworks, right? Let me see, do we need to set the size for them? No, we don't. So what I'm seeing here is everything should be fine. I don't know why it's doing this, but let's get to the bottom of it. So we have row and column. We are displaying the label there. This is the label. It's either going to say rocket fire or firework or fountain firework. That's perfectly fine. Then here we're going to add the information, right? So here in the first part, let's look at the first part, right? The first part, the column needs to, I think the column and the row, right? Yeah, the column and the row. I'm adding it at the wrong place. It's fine though. So the row we wanted to increase by 2 here, right? Then increasing by 2, we also need to increment the column by 1, right? Because you don't want it to be in the same. Okay, I shouldn't increase the column. Yeah, I see my issue. I shouldn't increase the column because I need to start at column 1 and then move to column 2. Okay, so now I see the issue. I've deciphered the problem. So I shouldn't do this. You see this? I shouldn't do that yet, right? So I should do it after each. I should do it after each input, right? Because if you check, it starts at 1. So I need to actually display that label at column 1. Then I increment it to 2 to display the other text field. But I also need to put it back to its default value 1 before I do the changes. So we should be very careful of understanding what you're doing. So I need to put it back to 1. And then after putting it back to 1, then we come back here, right? You should start at column 1, but then it should be at column 2. So I need to increment this here. I can just combine it like this. I don't have to add an extra line. And then I initialize column back to column 1. But then remember the row keeps increasing. That's fine. So the issue was my columns. And then here, the column should be column 1, but this should be column 2. So I need to increment this by 1. Then change column back to the default column 1. And then same applies here, column 1. And then this should be column 2. So I should increment it by 1. So let's run it. We should be seeing something here. Okay. And then open. Hopefully it's now displaying perfectly fine. It's fine, but then something is not right. Why are we not displaying? Why is it not displaying all the information? You see, something is not right here. I'm not sure what it is, but something is not right. So let me see. Let's look at, do I still have Scene Builder? Okay, I closed it, but it's fine. I'll just go to downloads and then open Scene Builder again. FXML, where are you? Where's FXML? Okay, so this is the code for displaying everything, right? You could use FXML. You can also look at the FXML and see, oh, style is FX is green, what border is what, this and this. Yeah, you can do that. So what I want to do is there's something that I want to fix here that's not okay. But since this thing is not opening into Scene Builder by default, I'm just going to open Scene Builder and then open the recent projects and then check. I need to check the fireworks part. See the fireworks? That's the one that I want to check. Let's check the grid itself. Okay, we have a scroll pane and the grid. So let's check the grid itself. What are the properties under the grid that I need to be aware of? So let's say use computed size. Nope, this is not the one. So let me undo. Okay, that's not the one that I wanted. So I don't know why it's not adding. Because I'm most definitely adding it at the right places. New label, set text, column is equals to 1. Okay, let me try to separate these things, right? But it doesn't really matter though. How I structure it doesn't really matter. The issue here is this thing doesn't want to add on to what's already there. Because there's a lot of files in there. You see, you should scroll down there and, show me a lot more information. So for the firework fuse length, I'm just going to call it fuse length because the name is too long. So let me remove that. Firework fuse length. And then open. let's read file number 2. So there we go. It's a bit better now. But then I can't see all the information. What's really going on here? Create fireworks.set path, right? We did that. And then entity.get the firework, and then add LBL title. Okay, so let me do this. Create fireworks.set set. Let me check something here. Okay, so let me say, should I say, is there preferred height and width, right? So, okay, there's preferred size where you specify 2 arguments at once. We could use that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say baseline offset same as the height. So let's do this and see, because the thing is, it's not the height, and the height and the width is not full enough. Okay, so okay, that's bad. Okay, let's say use computed size, right? The width, how wide it should be. Okay, so we need to also set the height. So let me try to use computed size and see if that would work. But by default, those are the values. So I don't think it should make any difference. Seems like it's just not appending and adding more instances. Yeah, it shouldn't make any difference. It's just not adding. So what could be the issue here? Okay, so let's try to set the pane to the scroll pane to the resized size, to use computer size. Where's the scroll pane? So before we set, okay, I did set the preferred height and width for the fireworks. So let's remove this. I want to test something here. Let's say I don't specify the preferred height and width. Is it going to try to match the parent class or what? Still not displaying everything, because it is, I'm sure it is taking in all the information, but it just happens to not display all the information. So let's do this, right? It displays this, and then there's a lot going on here. Let me just try to figure out what's the issue. So we open it, there we go, that should be fine, but then there's no more information in this thing, right? So let me do this and check if it's really storing or not. So let me cut all of this, then I'll paste it back, or just click undo. I just want to see if it displays that heading or not. So it is displaying the headings and everything, but then that means the way I'm setting my rows and columns. So we also need to fix that. So it is fine, just I think it's the rows and the columns. So row, edit by 2, and then column is by default is column 1. Increment the column by 1, store the column, put the column back to 1. So let me do that. Let me just divide this code so that I can see where I'm going wrong. If I separate the statements. I don't combine them at once. And then back to 1, and then this should be plus column. Then should remove this. I think the issue is the column. Yeah, I think I noticed the issue now. You see, when I go to the top, right, the column is still okay. The column is still not fixed, right? I need to initialize it back to 1 here. Back to 1. I think this should fix the issue. I think that was a small issue. The column is not going back to 1. I think that was the main issue. Okay, this is not the one. Yeah, you see, planning, that means I'm still not 100% correct. So let me fix it again. Let's see. If I increase the column, right? I set the column to 1 before I display, and then it gets me this. Then I increment column 2 so that it goes to column 2. And then row is still fine as point. And then you go back to the top. So let me just add the row here before I even display. Let's see. Okay, that's fine. Let me just do this to the row at the bottom. Let me just add those extra 2 spaces so that you can create the spaces between the two. But the column is still not okay. We need to fix the column. You see, it's almost there, but the column is still not right. Yeah, the column is still not right. I don't know what am I missing with the column. So let's say it's now in that column, right? And then this row becomes incremented by 2. And it goes back to the top, starts here, gets the entity, checks the instance, and the row hasn't been updated yet. So let me just say column is equals to 1 here, immediately before I place it. Let's see if that will make the changes that we need. Okay, it's fine, but something is still not correct. What am I missing here? Seems like I have to restart it from scratch now so that I can plan correctly and see where am I really going wrong. Remember, the row is fine. The issue is the column. So this gets placed at column 1, row 1, right? We go down, we set up our label and then now we're in row 3. So we'll be now in row 3, right? In row 3, and then we add the firework label in that row at column 1. We're still at column 1, right? Okay, let me just remove this so that my logic follows well. This is column 1, row 3, of which is this part over here, column 1, row 3. And then we increment the column because I want to display the text field on this side. And then there we go. After incrementing the column, we can now place the field, and it's still in the same row. Remember, still in the same row. And then we set the column back to 1, and then the row should be increased. Okay, we do increase it here by 1. And then we also increase the column by 1. And then we place this and then set it back to 1. And then we have the next labels and text field, increment the column, put it at column 1, and then increment the column. This will be column 2. And then go back to column 1, and then add this to column 1 in that next row, increment the column, that column in the current row, and then we just add 2 to the row so that it skips 2 rows. And then, but then the column should be initialized back to 1. So column should be back to 1. If I'm not mistaken here, column should be back to 1. So let me try again. It's still not okay. What's the real issue? What's missing? I'm doing everything. So I don't know what's the issue. Okay, what's up with the horizontal gap? Why is it so big? Let me say 2.0, 2.0. No, something is not right here. Why does it have such a huge gap? So let me do it. Or maybe it's the rows and the columns and placing and everything. But there shouldn't be such a huge disparity. Open. It's a bit bad. Okay, the horizontal gap does help. So let me put it back, change it back to 6. For some weird reason it's not displaying the way I want it to display. Why not? This thing is very tricky. I do create the label and then I add and then I get the text. I'm doing the right thing though. So let me, okay, let's do this. Let's see. So let me just say plus plus row. Right, increase to move to the next row. And then we have this. And then plus plus next row, plus plus next row. Then here I'm just going to say row plus 2. Let's see now if that's a bit better. Still. Okay, that's almost an hour. Oh, come on. Okay, this recording is going to be a bit longer. I'm almost done. I'm trying to figure out where I went wrong. So let's do this. At this point in time, since there's so much code involved here, I have to start afresh. Yeah, I should start afresh. Let me just start afresh. So let me remove all of this, right? I'll just add one thing at a time. So let's see if it will work if I just add only the labels, right? So these are the labels. And it's going to be for the same column, but the row is going to keep increasing. So I'm just going to say a row plus plus row to prefix, right? Pre-increment. So I'm going to say file open, then that. We should see labels. So yeah, something is not right. You see, we should see labels in the next row. At each new row, we should see the labels. So it's not adding them. I'm not sure what's the issue. Should be adding them. Oh, maybe it needs me to do this. I see. I think I see now. What a really annoying thing. I need to keep instantiating this thing over and over. I need to put it inside here. I think that's how it's going to generate new labels and stuff. But then my code, I still haven't fixed it. I just noticed that error. I need to keep making a new instance. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. It actually ended up fixing everything. Yeah, I needed to. I saw the issue. And then this coding stuff. I need to keep creating a new instance, because what happens is if I set text on one instance, it's technically one instance that exists. So I need to keep, get what I'm saying? I need to keep instantiating a different instance, because it would think that you're still referring. Remember, this is going to be allocated on stack. So it on the queue, on the, not in queue, what am I saying? On the heap. It's an object. So you need to keep creating a new object so that it points to a new object, or else it will keep pointing to the same object and you'll be confused and you think, okay, it's the same object. So what are you saying? Why do you think it's going to be in that way? So the gap is small now since the code is working. Let's say 12. Let's make it twice the size, right? But for the V gap, I think I should have a small H gap and a high V gap, because now this is, you're gonna have something like this, a small H gap but a high V gap. So the H gap should be reduced to back to 6. 6 is fine. Yeah, that's, if you don't understand what you're doing, you saw that was this very small issue that was causing me not to see my output. You see, there we go. We have everything that we need. So everything is being displayed perfectly fine. So you could reduce, because you see there's spaces here. I have too many equal signs. So I could remove the equal signs and reduce the number of equal signs. So let's just reduce it by 3 on both sides. So reduce it by 3 on both sides. 3. There we go. So there's one thing that I noticed that I'm not liking is the spacing between the two, right? So I'm gonna put increment by 2 here instead of 1 before we start. This is gonna be row plus 2. And then at the end there, I'm gonna have that row plus 2. I just want it to be tidy, to look neat. So there we go. You see, way better, much better now. Then you can add extra things like colors to color the rocket based on this color. You take that color, you color it there for this label, and for this ID. You could do that. You could definitely do that. So let's check. Let's try to do that. And remember what I said about text fields. Let's not do the colors part. You can play around with it yourself. So let's check here. Let me show you something. So let's check here. If I do this, you see I can delete the information. We don't want it to be editable. So all the text fields that we have written so far, we need to go back to all of them and set them to not be changed, right? They cannot be, they shouldn't be editable. So txt.displayid.set editable. The editable should be false. I want the user to be able to edit the text field. So we need to keep doing that for all text fields. So display name.set editable to false. And then txt display name.set editable to false. And then we also have, come on. Okay, we also have this part, txt display duration dot set editable to false. And then add display, okay, but that should be fine. Then txt name shouldn't be editable, but set editable to false. And then txt phone dot set editable to false. And then what else is missing? Those were labels, we don't have to worry about them. So here txt firework id dot set editable false. Then txt firework name that set editable to false. Still not done. There's a lot of text fields involved here. Txt fuse length dot set editable false, and then txt color dot set editable false again. I think that should be it. That should be everything. So open, read a file, can be any file. And then you see, we cannot edit it. I can't type anything. So that's just an important feature to add. Like I said, you could also add colors there to make it a bit beautiful. To color, you see, based on this color, if it's blue, color this whole thing to be blue. If it's green, color this whole thing to be green. And what are we coloring? Is this label, this label, this label, this label, and this label. So you could do that. That's like homework for you to do. So let's see what we should do now. And we also forgot to add the canvas. Okay, we did add the canvas, right? I'm assuming we did add the canvas. Okay, there's the canvas. We did add it. It's not an issue. So we are done with the majority of the code, right? I don't know how many marks that's worth. You can calculate. So far we haven't implemented canvas, right? So without implementing canvas at all, it's 2, 4, which is 4 marks plus 5, which is 9 marks. So everything else we got correct. Okay, not everything. The visitor design we haven't done. The main launches, everything on main is fine. So we have everything except for there's marks here, which is 10, 20, 30, 35. So 35 and that 9 marks there, those are the marks that we haven't done yet. But we have pretty decent marks. If you look at it, we have pretty decent marks. So let's just do this visitor design pattern thing. But then I don't want to do it now because now I have to make this video long and I don't want that. So I'll see if I'll do it, but this should be fairly straightforward, but it's fine. Let me see. 3 minutes. Okay, let me give myself, let me see. Should I do it or should I not do it? Okay, that's enough for today. I'll just do it another day, maybe tomorrow. So thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe. Subscribing is very important for me to be able to get to that level of my content being monetized, right? So please don't forget to subscribe.